Vanessa Levin. It's so great to hang out with you again. We've spoken a few times. We've interviewed for your incredible summit. Pre-K Pages has been going for 24 years. And so back in the day when I started many years ago, I remember, your page was like you were the leader in the Kid Blog network. So it's so fun to hang out and talk to you about SEL in particular for young learners. So
Yeah.
to get started, I'd love to hear a bit about, what's your background, what's your passion, and sort of where are you now? Where has Pre-K Pages brought you to today?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I've so enjoyed our conversations in the past, and I love the work that you do as well. But personally, I've spent 20 years in the public pre-kindergarten programs in Texas. So I was a teacher in the classroom and an administrator for the last 3 years. And my real passion, in addition to early childhood, right? We all have many interests, is working with English language learners. So
Mhm.
I'm really passionate about age appropriate hands on learning that supports diverse learners. And that's like my career right there, in addition to the time that I spend
Yeah.
coaching and mentoring teachers through pre-K pages and other arenas. But most of my time now is spent coaching and mentoring inside my Teaching Trailblazers program. And teachers in our program have access to more than 100 hours of stuff just like this, right? On demand
Yeah.
professional development training, all about preschool and pre K. Our complete resource library of more than 400 supports, printable supports, and teacher supports, along with a supportive, drama free community. Those are hard to find these days, right?
Yes, right. Yeah. I
And
remember that a couple of years ago, the summit that you put on. That would be the word I would say, that you had a Facebook page where us as presenters could come on. And I found the community was so welcoming. They were engaged, they were interested, they were kind. Yeah, it's exactly what you say there. You've really created an incredible community of early childhood professionals.
thank you. Yeah, the days of, back in the day when we would start creating a new Facebook group or something, it was always a challenge. You're kind of learning how to fly as you're building the plane, right? But I have been
Yeah.
managing Facebook groups now for at least, I want to say 13 years, maybe. They've been around for a long time, right? So
Yeah.
I've got it down to a science now.
Yes, I love it. And when I think that speaks a lot about who you be as well, Vanessa. You come across as kind and friendly, but you also kind of have that draw the line. You create the boundaries there too, right? And that's
Yeah, I
important.
think so. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So why I sparked to speak to you again was I saw in one of your emails that came through about your membership that you've created this new Seeds of Success SEL curriculum. And why this has sparked for me uh, personally, Vanessa, is that I've been talking to lots of different people, sort of this SEL series, so to speak. The thing about SEL right now in the United States, it's become very politicized, right? And so, on one hand, it can be there's a group of people that are saying we don't need it, we don't have time, we want the academics. Another group of people saying, including Dr. Mark Brackett from Permission to Feel, he's saying in Yale University, the students that have social, emotional, and cognitive, right, having those three. And we're hearing from, Education Week, they've done studies, they've sent out surveys for people across America saying, what tell us about how you're implementing SEL. And the research is very clear. And Castle is also doing a lot of work on looking at policies about SEL and the importance of students having this well-rounded, you know,
Mhm.
um, skills. So
Right.
I'd love to hear about, from your perspective in early childhood, what sparked you to create this curriculum, and what do you think is sort of missing in some of these sort of
Right.
mandated or SEL resources that are currently available?
Right. Well, great questions. Um, First of all, I want to say that SEL is not political. It's been around forever and it will continue to exist. It is it's grounded in evidence-based research. There's tons of bodies of work out there by many different researchers and well-known professors, and as you said, at Yale and so forth. This is proven science. And it is absolutely nothing to do with politics. It's all about creating children who are well-rounded, right? Like you said,
Mhm.
that professor from Yale talked about the social, emotional, and the cognitive piece being so important, and that is true. And when it comes to teaching these skills, they actually are more important. This might be mind-blowing, so just hold on to your hats, listeners here. Um, when we teach social emotional skills intentionally to young children in a very sequential and supportive way, they actually can't do the academic stuff until we get to this piece, the social emotional learning. There's tons of research out there. So, the number one challenge that every teacher that I encounter today, whether they're in my program or online or social media or whatever, the number one biggest challenge they all have right now is challenging behaviors in the classroom. It cuts across all socioeconomic levels. It doesn't matter who you are, where you live in the world, how much money you have, what color your skin is, who you pray to. None of that matters. All of the teachers can agree, right, that challenging behaviors are the biggest problem. And I'm sure all the directors out there listening as well um, would have the same, would say that their teachers are experiencing these challenges. And you may have heard some of the same things, right, Giselle?
Absolutely. Yes. With
Yes.
kids yoga teachers. Absolutely. That
Yeah.
is the number one challenge we're hearing as well.
Yeah. And back in the day when I first started teaching, this is back in the very early 90s. I know some of you probably weren't born then, but I certainly was. And I remember thinking that we were, you know, forging forward on this new frontier and kind of letting go of the really old ways. Like when I was in kindergarten, we used to ride tricycles in the classroom and have balance beams, and all of that was great, as from a teacher's perspective, but it wasn't what was happening in the classroom when I
Mm.
started teaching. It was mostly academic stuff. Now we had gotten into that rut, right? We had been pulled into the teaching pre-K is more like teaching kindergarten, and kindergarten was like first grade. Well, fast forward to today, and now it's
Mm.
like pre-K is first grade and kindergarten is second grade, and it's
Yeah.
just getting worse and worse, right? And the kids today are not the kids I had in my classroom 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So much has changed. And we have to, in order to, I don't know if I want to use the word fix or not, but in order to make improvements, we have to
Mm.
change what we're doing or what we've been doing, right? And we have to look to the research, the evidence-based stuff, and say, where is this missing piece? Why are we
Mm.
why are we struggling so hard to teach, second grade to preschoolers or whatever? Why are we struggling so hard with this? Well,
Mm.
the answer is really, really clear to me, and that is we're trying to pound square pegs into round holes, and we're
Yeah.
missing social emotional learning. How can we possibly teach this high level content to young children who don't have, you know, executive function skills? They can't wait for their turn. They can't, all of these things haven't been developed in these little learners yet. And so, in order to even attempt to teach some of these things, because some of them are ridiculous, obviously, we can't make,
Yes.
4-year-olds write paragraphs. But in order to do that, we really have to be more intentional about how we teach social emotional skills. And for many of our teachers today, that's not something they were taught. So, how do you do it, right? How do you do
Yeah.
it? Teachers are being told, well, build relationships, create connections. Um, but what does that look like in the preschool classroom? It is
Right.
so easy to forget that telling is not teaching. And what build a
Mm.
relationship or create connections means to each teacher is going to be different. We need something more than just telling, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, everything you just said. And also on top of that, right? So that you're seeing these challenging behaviors. So as a teacher, you can't even
Mhm.
put one foot in front of the other because of your own fight or flight. Your own nervous system is
Right.
wackadoodle. I know this from subbing, a teacher subbing recently, that it is so hard. It is so hard to even get, and you have to get through the curriculum because you have, you've got your administration, people are coming in and out of your classroom, parents are demanding change, so you have to keep going through the curriculum. So it's an impossible thing. As a teacher, you're balancing your family, looking after your young children or looking after your elderly parents. You've got, all the other things that you have to deal with after school. And then you've got the curriculum, which is highly demanding. As you say, it's not age appropriate and certainly archaic in a lot of ways, right? That
Right.
we're having to play. I remember in one situation, I had to play a video that we were learning about. I think it was like habitat in Chicago or something. The video was from the 50s and it was, I mean, I was bored. And then it hung up. So I said, let's put a pause on that video because
Right.
like, why are we expecting children that they're not behaving because it's not fun and engaging, right? So remember back in the day, Vanessa, where it was fun, it was light, it was connected, it was creative. And it just breaks my heart that teachers don't have the
Right.
bandwidth to be able to bring this kind
Right.
of fun, engaging curriculum back. So, gosh, you've
Teachers,
just sparked a passion in me, Vanessa. I so agree with you.
I know. Thank you. I definitely agree we're on the same page. But teachers today are more frustrated now than ever before,
Mm,
right? Because, like you said, they spend all their time putting out behavior fires. That is
yeah.
exactly what they're doing. And they feel like, um, I don't know how to say this any other way, but chickens with their heads cut off, right? They're just running
Yeah.
around in the
Yep.
classroom and
Hmm.
putting out these fires. And then they get really frustrated because A, it doesn't really help to put out the fires for children, right? Instead, we need to be teaching them how to put out their own fires, but they
Mm,
don't have time for that because they're putting out the behavior fires and they have
mm,
to meet all this demanding, whether it's state guidelines or learning objectives or whatever they may have. And so they're even more frustrated now, right? So
mm.
how can they actually don't feel like they're doing their job, like
Right.
they're doing it poorly, and they have less energy and time to spend with their families
Hmm.
because they're so drained at the end of the day. Um, all of the things that we're, trying to piece together right now in
Mm,
early childhood classrooms, it's just a it's just a bunch of things, right? It's just a bunch of things. They're
mm,
disconnected and they don't really do much good in the long run. I mean, you can plaster your calm down area with posters from floor to ceiling,
right.
but is it really going to do any good, right? Without systemic, sequenced and intentional lessons that are actually going to teach kids how to internalize these concepts and how to make it age appropriate so that they
Hmm.
understand what it is we're trying to do. Because without those things, we're just pushing a boulder uphill all the time, right?
Yes, right. Right,
So,
exactly. All right. So let's shift to success stories, right? So in your experience creating this curriculum for your early childhood professionals, what would you see are sort of your top three SEL activities that
ah,
have not only the biggest impact, right, but doesn't add more to the early childhood teacher's plate,
right.
right? And it doesn't take a lot of time. So what are some ways that teachers can start today, tomorrow, to start small, right? As you talked about, it's a systemic issue, but how can we make little baby steps forward?
Right. Well, I think that all good early childhood teachers use song in some way, shape, or form during the day, right? Songs are a way to build connections with children, right? They're fun, kids love them, and they're the easiest thing to incorporate right away with zero supplies, right? You don't need anything,
Mhm.
just a familiar tune and the words. And so I find that teachers today don't always know those traditional familiar tunes that I was brought up with, right? My mom would
Mhm.
sing a lot of these traditional rhymes with me when I was little, like "Where's Thumpkin" or things like that. Just these little rhymes and chants. I'm a little
Mhm.
teapot, right? I remember those from my childhood, but not everyone does. And so, in those cases, if you're not familiar with what a piggyback song is, go to YouTube, look them up, and you'll be like, "Oh, that's Jingle Bells. That tune is set to Jingle Bells, or this tune is set to whatever." And you can learn those tunes there. But
Yeah.
one of my favorites is like I said, piggyback songs. And I've taken the hard work. I don't know, is this going to be video?
A video, yeah. So for those of our listeners, Vanessa's showing us some printouts that's coming from from her SEL program. When I feel frustrated, I love it,
Yeah.
and it's a
So
little song, right?
it's a little song. So I'm just going to sing you one. It is called When I'm Mad. I've got them for every single week in this curriculum, but this is to the tune of Jingle Bells. And I will say I'm not a professional singer, and that's okay. So bear with me, but it's called When I'm Mad, and it's to the tune of Jingle Bells. So I'm going to try it. Ready? When I'm mad, I stop and take a breath. In and out, nice and slow. It helps me feel my best. And they can let out an exhale here. I like to have them stand up when we do these so that we can incorporate whole body movements. Because the more you incorporate whole body movements, the more engaging it's going to be, the more you're going to be able to hold their attention, right? And then there's a second verse to this. It says, now this one is a little harder for me. Now I'll do child's pose. I curl up on the floor and they
Oh,
kneel down and put their forehead down to their hands, breathing deep, calm and still. I'm not mad anymore. And then you sit up and smile,
oh,
right?
that's so sweet.
I mean, you can do this in circle time. Most preschool teachers have a morning meeting or a circle time. And that
Yeah.
can be like your introduction, like the hook that you use, right? And
Yeah.
now you're going to do lessons on teaching them how to breathe, right? And how to do a very calming yoga pose. And you don't even have to call it yoga, you can call it a movement pose, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, so these tunes are very easy. Like they go to tunes of like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star when I feel frustrated, or I'm a little teapot when I'm sad, right? And I think that they are just such an easy way. And you don't even need the printouts. I mean, you can just um, take the tune and make it your own if you want. I used to do that all the time in the classroom. Like somebody would say, "Oh, I can't pick up all the blocks by myself," and so I would start singing, I need help picking up the blocks. I would just put it to a tune and, and it just gets kids' attention and they're going to come and help and all that good stuff. You know how it is.
Yes.
Songs are so good. And these tunes provide that supportive structure to help deepen understanding of the concepts that we teach. So that's one of the things that I love that teachers can do right away, implement into what they're already doing. They don't need anything. And then the second thing are social stories. And I'm sure you're familiar with these, Giselle. I'm preaching to the choir here, right? Um, but social stories written at the preschool level, they're kind of few and far between, right? I find, at least, I find that most social stories are written for much, much older children and they have like really long text, right?
Hmm.
The longer the text that you're reading on the page, the longer that is, the more opportunities there are to lose their attention,
Yes.
right?
Right. Yes.
So now I'm holding up one of my
Oh.
social stories
Hmm.
here that I have written personally, and I know work with young children because we've been field testing these. So this one says, when I'm feeling mad, right? And as we turn the pages, I'm just going to pop this down here. It says, I love to play and have fun, but sometimes I get mad. Another word for mad is angry. So now we're introducing vocabulary. These are vocabulary words that if your children incorporate them into their daily speech patterns, right? They're going to have more words to describe how they feel, right? And social emotional is learning how to identify and how to describe the emotions. And so I think that there's vocabulary in these as well. And then we're going to talk about this is just a portion of the book. We're going to talk about specific skills that we're going to be teaching to children. It says, I can do a yoga pose to help me feel better. This is later in the story, of
Oh.
course. And so then I have posters to support and lessons to actually teach that. And then at the very end, it says, now I know how to help myself feel better so I don't have to throw, kick, or scream, or whatever you want to say at the end. Of course, they're always open
Yes.
to interpretation. Oh, I got the pages out of order. Here's the one before it. It says, I can take rainbow breaths to help me feel better. And of course,
Oh,
teaching
Vanessa.
that
Do
strategy.
they? Do they all do your social stories have yoga and breathing
Yes.
incorporated or
Almost
oh
all
my
of them have
goodness.
yoga and breathing incorporated into them, or
Oh my
techniques.
goodness.
Like some
Yeah.
of the ones that I'm doing, writing right now, they will have like strategy cards. Like I can squish a squeezy ball. Right now, I'm talking about it being anxious, right? In one of the lessons I'm writing. And so there's a squeezy ball. So maybe instead of a pose this time, they're doing a squeezy ball, or maybe instead of a
Yeah.
breath, they're doing the squeezy ball. It's just whatever tool or thing or song or whatever or story is going to help them is what we're going to focus on. And then, of course, there are these specific lessons that we're
Mm,
kind of talking about in the social stories. But, social stories are great, but what we really want, right? If let me know if you agree here, Giselle. What we really want is to get parents on board with all of this and to understand how we're teaching this in the classroom so
mm,
they can extend the learning into their homes. And so what I have here for the listeners are I have the little printable black and white version that kids
mm,
can take home every Friday. So every week is a different focus. So like there was a week on being mad, there was a week on being sad, a week on being frustrated. Now I'm working on anxiety and things like that. But there's a social story that matches the read aloud that you did in the classroom. And so all you have to do is print it and staple it. There's actually no cutting. I can't stand when you have to cut books up and then staple them together and you have to put the pages in line in front. No, no, no. Just fold and staple. This is so quick and easy to do. And
yeah.
then you send it home. And of course, you're going to send it home, but the parent needs to know like more than that, right? They need to know like exactly what's going on. So then there's a caregiver connection for each week. It's like a letter to the parents explaining exactly what we're learning and why we're learning it. And it lets
Mm,
them know that the social story is coming home. And then on the last page of every social story, it invites the child to draw a picture of one of the strategies that they learned about that week. And then we're
yeah.
giving parents the vocabulary and the definition of what this is and conversations they can have, questions to ask their child, and then suggested books from the library that you have read aloud in class that week as well. So we have those for every single week. So parents know and they can be on board too.
Oh my goodness, I love this so much. And here's why I love it, Vanessa. So I love that it's multidisciplinary, right? You're having children move and read and share and connect. You've already got all the materials for early childhood. You're an expert in that area. You've got, thousands of teachers you've been working with over the years, so you know what works, right? And I also love that it's not, some of these SEL programs are sort of a push and play, or there's some kind of technology or apps or
Mm,
whatever involved. And I know that works for some people, but what I love about yours in particular, you're speaking my language, that it's story based, right? It's song based, it's interactive, and there's lots of room for the teachers to modify or change things. So maybe if they're looking at and the curriculum's there, so you've got your themes every week, which I love, but maybe the teacher had, a topic of mad, for example, and they've got a picture book that they would also like to use, or they got their own, so they can draw from their own library within that theme, right? So
right,
it's not adding more, but in fact, it's complementing. You
right.
can't, it's such a no-brainer. You can't help but just add it in. And then you've got the letter at the end of the week, and you've got a social story to send to the parents. I mean, you really
Yeah.
have got it all. I love it.
Um, I think that when it comes to these kind of things that we're talking about, this curriculum, for example,
Mm,
teachers, I believe, this is what I believe. I don't know about all teachers or all parents, but I believe that teachers should have the autonomy to
yeah.
choose the topics they want to teach. Let's say there's a teacher who's having a struggle with kids who are having separation anxiety, for example, right? That would fall under
Mhm,
anxiety, right? Separation
mhm.
anxiety falls under the topic of anxiety. And so there's a whole week on that. And so we talk about all the different ways that kids can feel anxious during that week. And while we're doing that, teachers can pick and choose what they want, right? They're doing it
Mhm.
because they need that right now. So I feel like
Right.
there's a flexibility too, if you have a struggle that you can pull from. the curriculum and address it right then and there. Because when let's say the curriculum says it's week 8 that you're introducing anxiety, right? Well, that might be too late in the year. So you can
Right, right.
all the things that you need right now,
Yeah.
but they're still having that supportive structure and they're still
Mhm.
including all the things. So every week contains the same things. Like there's um, posters featuring diverse children, and we can talk more about that if you want and how important that is and why it's
Yeah.
important to social emotional development. But
Yes.
there's posters and there's activities. This is more like a kind of a little activity. It says who's feeling worried, and then they have to look at the faces because we're spending time looking at faces to identify the feelings of others and our own. So we've already done that, and there's a little activity to follow up with things like that. So yeah.
Oh, I love it so much. So you must share a story. Tell us a story about maybe someone in your community, one of your teachers in the community, maybe the challenge the child had and sort of how this SEL work, these activities have helped them.
Absolutely. So all of our teaching trailblazers have access to these social emotional or this social emotional curriculum rather. And I will admit that I didn't start the year with them. I didn't have them ready for the first day of school because I was battling some health challenges last year. So I was a little behind. So I got the first unit out probably, I think it was like late October rather, early November. And so some of our teachers jumped right in feet first and they were like, I am doing this. It's not too, I believe it's never ever too late to try something new, right, with your
Of
class.
course.
So some of
Yeah.
them jumped right in. Others are kind of waiting until they have the full thing and they can digest it and take all the trainings that go with it that I have. But um, Linda is one of our jump in feet first, right? Jump in
Yeah.
head first into the curriculum. And she started using it like the day that it was released. Like she was our early adopter, our early field tester. And I will say Linda has shared a lot of her experiences in our group. Like I read this social story today and I immediately saw this change in this one student that I've been having challenges with. I mean,
Wow.
that is powerful, right? If you can read a social story, maybe sing a little song, a little piggyback song, and then immediately see a change in that one really challenging student that you've been really struggling with. Now, all kids can benefit from these lessons, right? All
Mhm.
students can
Mhm.
benefit, but some kids need them even more than others.
Right.
And so she saw that change immediately and she said, I'm all in. I'm doing every single one of these lessons and I'm doing them the way they're laid out. I don't care what time of the year it is. And Linda, the next month when I was supposed to release unit 2, she was pounding on my door, like in my email inbox, like, I've finished unit 1. When can I expect unit 2? My kids need another social story. They're asking me for it. They're asking me
Oh,
for another song. And already reviewed 1 week. I need more. And I said, Linda, here it is. It's not official yet, but here, you take it and run with it. And she was like,
yes.
oh my gosh. And the
Yes.
same with this unit. She's pounding down this next unit, unit 3 is she's pounding down my door for unit 3. And so I've been giving Linda some sneak peeks
Yes.
into these lessons. And she's been my early field tester and she just has had such success. And what she's also said that really has struck home with me is that she's been able to teach academics more.
Hmm.
She's been able to get to those academics because her kids have the skills and the tools they need,
Yeah.
right, to manage and identify their emotions. And so she's not putting out those behavior fires all the time. And that's only with unit 3, right? We're like
Yes.
what? Each unit has 4 weeks of instruction. So we're only on like week 12 and there's still um, 4 more units to go. So
Right.
it's been pretty amazing so far. I can't wait until she's able to give me feedback on how the year ended, right?
Right. 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 I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just makes sense because what you're talking, so if you step away from it for a moment, right, just to summarize, what you're doing, one of the things I've always looked at your website for are book lists. And we
Yes.
attach a lot of those because we have
Yeah.
thematic yoga postures. So we always add your book list. But you're adding SEL into your curriculum that's already happening right now,
Right.
right? You're adding books, you're adding songs, and the only difference is you're taking social emotional topics
Mhm.
like feelings, right? Feelings, getting along, problem solving, these competencies that you'll find in Castle, and
Right.
adding them to stories and to
Mhm.
songs and
Yeah.
to interactions, the way they can, and then posters. So you
Mhm.
just you're using the same skills. They're learning to sit still listening to a story, right? They're learning to share, take turns, express themselves, identify their own emotions, right? So all of these things are naturally happening through an experience of song and stories.
And we do have a book list for each of the weeks as well, like a suggested book list that
Yes.
you have to take to your library and say, do you have
Perfect.
any of these books? You can preview them first on Amazon. I love the free previews on Amazon to let you know, is this book really right for my class?
Yes.
Then you can go to the library and grab them because there are so many great books out there right now. This awareness that we have of the importance of SEL is it's always SEL has always been important, but this awareness that we have now has really placed it to the forefront of like, this is the piece that today's children
Hmm.
need, right? They sit in front of screens so much and
Hmm.
they don't have a lot of these skills in place that they used to have when they come to preschool. Like they have
Right.
never had to try to delay gratification or they've never
Right.
had to wait for a turn because on the tablet or the phone
Yes.
or whatever device, it's
Yeah.
you and the tablet. So they're always, you know, not practicing
Yes.
they're not practicing those skills that they need.
Yeah. Totally. So, you've shared so much. It's amazing. I want to jump in your membership right away. That's what makes me feel like. So, what advice do you have for early childhood educators who really would like to incorporate SEL, but again, they don't know where to start, they're overwhelmed, and or they might have an SEL curriculum that's mandated by their district.
Right,
Where
right.
do educators start?
When it comes to SEL, I think the best place to start is with yourself. So sometimes we have to shift our mindset
Mm-hmm.
a little bit because it can seem like this is just another thing that you have to do. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't possibly do one more thing because teachers today are stretched so thin. They have so
Mm-hmm.
little time and patience. So the mindset shift there would be um, it's not just another thing. Like this is actually the piece that's going to help you get to all
Mm-hmm.
the academics and diminish the challenging behaviors that you're seeing in your classroom. So this is like the foundation of everything that you're doing in the classroom. And I would argue that it's the most important thing you're doing because this skill, these SEL skills, social emotional learning skills, are lifelong, right?
Yeah.
These are gonna, I think research shows that kids will show benefits of learning these skills for 20 years. Like these benefits keep increasing, and it's just such a powerful thing
Yeah.
that it's a must, I believe. It's a must in every classroom, in every today's classroom, right? Um,
Yes.
to teach these skills. But it's our mindset about it's not just another thing. It's something that you need to have to teach the children in your classroom today. And you need to have a plan for it because just throwing a bunch of posters up on the wall or just creating a spot that we call the calming corner or whatever you want to call it isn't going to fill in those gaps. You know what I mean? It needs to be sequential. It needs to be um, building on skills. It needs to be so much more than that, but it shouldn't be seen as just another thing to teach. It should be seen as the thing that upon which all future learning is built, right?
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. And also looking forward, right? 20 years. They say, right, the job force, the number
Yes.
one thing that they're looking for is social skills and personal
Yes.
interactions. So,
Yeah, and it also increases their chances of graduating from high school and going on to college and getting a steady
right.
full-time job. All of those
Mhm.
things,
Right.
research has shown children who have these skills in place do better in life, not just
Yeah.
school, not just academics, but life. And I'm sure you've experienced, Giselle, in just the world in general, right? When you encounter somebody, let's say, I don't know, I'm on the phone with customer service a lot for different things.
Yeah.
Different things. I was on customer service the other day because there was a sweater that I wanted to buy, but I couldn't find it. And I was talking to the company, on the phone because the chat thing doesn't ever get you exactly what you want, right?
Yeah.
And the first girl that I talked to, um, didn't have SEL skills, you could tell. I mean, she was not helpful at all. And she wasn't controlling her emotions. And she just wanted to, give me the info, which the info she had wasn't anything to do with what I wanted, So I just called back and I got another person, and boy, was she good at her job, right? And I could tell
Mhm.
she had really good interpersonal skills. She, knew how the business world worked. She, all of these things that tie back to social emotional learning. She was very calm. She didn't get flustered when I said, well, I
Mm.
don't have the number of the sweater. Every product has a number. And I said, I don't have it. She's like, that's okay. I'll look it up for you. And it was just a very different experience. So that's my little
I
tip for
love,
dealing with customer service.
yes.
Sometimes just call back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I love that too, because I think sometimes, well, we can as educators be so in the moment, it's like the blinders, what's in front of us. But when we can, as a mindfulness activity, step back and zoom out and sort of look at these young people in 20, 30 years, and they could be the ones that are speaking, what it's like when our students grow up and we see them on Facebook or they reach out or they email or whatever, right? That we are planting seeds with these young people and it's
Seeds of
worth,
success.
right. Yes. Yeah. So I love that. So how do we connect with you and how do we find you online? How do we sign up for your membership and all that good stuff?
Well, I think that the first thing I want to do is point listeners to a free week of lessons from Seeds of Success. Now, these are just the lessons. They're not all the supportive tools like the social stories or the posters or the whole thing, but just the lessons to give you an idea of how age appropriate they are. So I'm going to give Giselle a link that she can
Great.
put in the show notes or wherever that
Yeah.
you can click on. It's a really long URL, so I'm not going to spell it all out for you. But
Mhm.
basically, if you scroll down on that page, there'll be a place to enter your name and your email, and you just put it in there, and it will send you the free week. And I think it's the week that I just was talking about was the week of being mad, right? I think that's the one that's in that. I could be wrong, but I believe that's the one. And so you can just get a feel for it, a taste for it. And on that same page, after you get um, the free week, if you want to sign up, you can. But if not, no hard feelings because
Yeah.
everyone's at a different place in their SEL journey, right? But I
Yes.
will say that the units come with training as well. So inside of Trailblazers, we have the video training with me explaining each week what this is, what it looks like, what it sounds like, and how to implement it step by step. So every unit has that 1 hour training as well. And I think that when teachers have that extra support that they need to actually implement the lessons, it becomes so much more clear and it becomes so much easier for them to digest. But
Right.
where to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me everywhere with pre-K pages. There's Instagram, of course, and it's all pre-K pages, all one word, no hyphens, and then wherever your personal preferences. Except that I got locked out of TikTok recently. So I,
All right.
I forgot my password and I kept getting it wrong and then it locked me out. So I haven't been on there recently, but I still have one. I'll figure it out soon. But
Thank you
everywhere
so
else,
much.
yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Vanessa. I so appreciate you and I love what you're doing. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. And thanks to you for all you do for teachers and children as well.
Thank you, Vanessa.